Well, that can't be good. Something went wrong with my computer this morning. It's doing all sorts of really bad things this morning. I hope I haven't gotten a virus in spite of all my virus programs. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, fighting with my computer this morning, getting all sorts of funky error messages. Anyway, we are involved in a study of Thessalonians, and we are in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and we want to keep in mind as we are looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 that Paul is addressing a situation in which those at Thessalonica are concerned about their family members, about the members of the church there who have died before the coming of the Lord. They have written to Paul asking him about their fate. Now, we have pointed out before that if Paul had taught them that the parousia, the coming of the Lord, might not be for a gazillion years, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years, why would the Thessalonians be so concerned that their loved ones had died before the event? They would know their loved ones were going to die before that event happened. But instead, that's not the scenario. They are distraught, they're discouraged, they're troubled because their loved ones have died before the Lord came. Now, the only way we can explain that, as I've pointed out before, is if Paul had taught the Lord would come in their lifetime, in that generation. And that's confirmed by verse 15. As Paul, remember, writing to encourage them in light of the death of their loved ones, their members of that first century church, and he says, "For this we say by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep." Now, I would suggest to you that any normal reading of this text would suggest, basically would demand, that Paul was talking about the Lord coming in their lifetime. Now, we are told, oh, well, you know, Paul is just using the editorial we, or the royal we. Well, the interesting thing about that, in books on grammar, they tell you that the editorial we is spoken and used by a writer or a speaker to speak of himself and his contemporaries as a collective corporate group. In other words, he is not speaking abstractly of some far distant and far unknown group. He's speaking of himself and his contemporaries. But I want you to notice that the language here, the Greek in it, is we, the ones alive. The remaining ones. In other words, the force of it is in the present, and Paul is writing to people who are alive. Now catch this. He is contrasting the living ones with the ones who have just died. He is contrasting the ones who are concerned about their loved ones who have died. They died, we're alive. We will remain. Paul is not speaking, again, of some abstract, unknown group of living ones. Paul is addressing the ones who are alive right then. We, the living ones. We, the ones remaining until the parousia. It is fascinating to me how folks who otherwise insist that we take the language of the Bible literally, all of a sudden when they're confronted with passages like this, they seek in a million ways to disparage the force of these words, to mitigate the power of these words, to negate the power of those words. I have an extensive discussion of this language in my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, the Wedding of the King of Kings. You really, really need to get a copy of this book, in which I examined Paul's language of we who are alive and remain. Now, he will say it again in verse 17, and we'll take a look at that later. But for now, you just simply have to catch the power of the fact that Paul's comment about we who are alive and remain is in the direct, specific context of the ones 2,000 years ago who had died. He is contrasting that group with the ones who had not died, i.e., the ones who were still alive, and he says, we are the remaining ones until the coming of the Lord. That is an emphatic statement that the Lord was coming in the first century. That agrees with everything else we've seen in the book of Thessalonians. Christ was coming back in their lifetime to confirm himself as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. And don't forget, order a copy of this book, okay? Go to my website, eschatology.org, BibleProphecy.com. Order the book. Say you mention that you saw the offer on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll refund your shipping. Thank you again. We appreciate so much you joining us every day. It's just so fantastic to hear from so many of you. Be safe this weekend. Lord willing, we'll be back with you on Monday.